Welcome back to Vox in a Box, the podcast that puts a voice in comics. I'm your host, Michael Corley. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are covering classic X-Men number 80. In this 80th episode of Vox in a Box, it is titled Decisions. We open with Scott Summers, Cyclops, kissing his new bride. That is right. His new bride is none other than Madeline Pryor. Now, of course, Madeline Summers. They are going on a honeymoon. And how do they get there? Why, how else are two pilots going to get there? They're going to fly there. They're on a plane. They're heading out over the ocean. And as always happens in comics, an enormous storm comes up. The storm is raging overhead. It hits them with lightning. They're shorting out their circuitry. They are going down, of course. They're going to die in the Pacific far below. Ha! We know better than that, don't we, dear listeners? We cut to Japan. Mariko's bedroom. Mariko, the longtime love of Wolverine. She awakens to find a sword laying on her bed. She looks up to see Wolverine standing over her. She wants to know why he has come back. She has returned the sword to him by mail, and he came personally to return it. Why did she return it? Last time we heard, Mariko had told him that he had no honor, that he did not belong to her, that she did not love him. Why did she return the sword, the ancestral sword of her clan, to him? Because we find out that Xavier has undone the damage that Mastermind had done to her brain, making her think that Logan was unworthy of her love. He's saying that everything should be like it was before. Everything should be like when we were about to be married. But she says, everything is different. You have killed my father. You took the path of honor. You did what was right. Even though it costs you dear, I must do the same. Even though I was under Mastermind's influence, because of him, I have bound my clan to the Japanese underworld. I must undo this, and I must do it alone, or I will have no honor. And though Wolverine may be a savage killer, though he may have uncontrollable berserker rages, he understands the honor of a samurai. And he leaves, taking the sword with him, saying, if she ever needs him, to simply call. Back in the Pacific, fortunately, this is a pontoon boat. It has the floaties, as we might say, on the side. I believe that is the technical term. And Scott Summers and Madeline Summers are making repairs. Scott, of course, is very handy with repairs, having had the Lockheed jet damaged so many times. He slips and nearly falls into the water. Now, she catches him, and he says, it's okay, I can swim. And she calls out, you great dummy, so can he. And a giant shark pops out of the water, nearly biting off Cyclops' legs. He's weak with fear. He almost died. He says, he missed, but I won't. He lifts up his red ruby quartz sunglasses and fires an optic blast at the shark. The shark swims away. It doesn't want anything to do with this tasty morsel who fires blasts that feel like being hit by a truck. It heads down in the water. And suddenly tentacles come up and grabs this giant great white shark as if it was a little fish. And its role has changed from hunter to prey. We cut to Washington, D.C., where a red-headed man looking very serious in a business suit comes to the Capitol. He identifies himself as Henry Peter Gyrich. He is late for a meeting. This meeting is to discuss what should be done about the mutant threat. They are primarily talking about Magneto and the time that he destroyed an entire Siberian city because Russia disobeyed him, because they defied him when he tried to take over the world. And they realized that these mutants have powers that could destroy the United States. To give more details on the mutant threat in America, it is given by a Dr. Valerie Cooper. Have you heard of Dr. Valerie Cooper? Probably not. She hasn't really featured much in these comics, but she is a government official, blonde, attractive woman who is talking about the mutant menace, and especially about those dangerous X-Men. And though this red-headed man, this Peter Gyrich, is hardly a man who goes easy on mutants, he's actually suggesting that for now, they do nothing, that they wait and watch and prepare themselves in case the mutants take the offensive. But Valerie Cooper wants to destroy the mutants now, before it's too late. Back to the Pacific! They are trying to get this stupid plane working, but it will not work. The engine makes a blam! I love sound effects in comics. And Madeline Pryor is saying, maybe if I was Phoenix, I could just use my powers to get us out of here. And Scott is horrified. He said, please, if you really knew what you were saying, you would not make that joke. Clearly, they're showing that even though she has married Scott, she's still not over the fact that his last love looked exactly like her. But they're still trying to work things out. They're going to get things over, even though the rain has started up again, even though it's starting to get cold, and even though a tentacle has begun to rise from behind the plane. Back to New York City! Underneath New York City, it is also raining. We see the gutters, we see the sewers, and we see a small room. Entering it is a man with white skin, bulging eyes. It is Caliban, member of the Morlocks, and he's furious because Callisto, Sunder, and Mask have entered his room without permission. And Callisto is saying, "Oh no, we're here to help you, Caliban. We heard you lost your girlfriend, Kitty Pryde." Mask shows a picture of her, and Caliban is furious. He doesn't want them to even talk about Kitty Pryde, the mutant that he loves so much, even though he knows he can't have her because he's too ugly, because he's too different, because he just doesn't belong in her world. And they get Caliban to admit that Kitty promised last time she was here that she would marry Caliban, that she would stay with Caliban forever if Caliban agreed to help her. And Callisto says, "Oh, don't worry. We'll make sure that she keeps her promise." Back to that ship, the rain is getting worse. The storm is getting more ferocious. They've got to get this plane started or they'll be capsized, and then they truly will drown here out at sea. They finally get the engines going. Scott and Madeline are going to be able to get away. All that Madeline has to do is reach over and pull up the sea anchor, keeping them steady, when a giant tentacle comes out of the sea and wraps around her neck. Scott calls after her. He's seen her go under, but he doesn't know what's going on. He has to try. He dives under the water. He sees her surface for a moment. She's got the tentacle wrapping around her. She calls out, "Scott!" He fires his optic blast. Now, he only has his sunglasses on, which means he can only control his blast by taking off his sunglasses, which gives him only limited control over his incredibly powerful optic blasts. He's able to fire it and make it let her go. The problem is, as with tentacles, there's not just one. Two more wrap around his leg and pull him under the water. His glasses start to float away from him. He barely manages to grab them. He thinks to himself he can't afford to be gentle. There isn't time. He opens his optic blast again and fires at the creature. He's trying to come back up to help Madeline get back up to the surface. Both of them are underwater. They've only got seconds of water. They've only got seconds of air left when the tentacle wraps around his face. It's literally going to crush his skull. His glasses float away. But he thinks to himself, even as his skull is about to be crushed, that this creature made a bad mistake, because by wrapping itself around his head, all he has to do is open his eyes. His optic blasts at full blast will punch through a steel truck. They blast right through the tentacle. It lets him go. He and Madeline are able to make it to the surface. They're swimming back to the plane when he's grabbed one more time. The giant kraken-like squid is pulling him under the water. It is going to kill him. He didn't get a decent breath. He's only got seconds left before he drowns. He looks down in the direction where he believes it to be and opens full blast His optic blasts underneath the water. Everything goes red. He doesn't know how deep he is. He can't open his eyes. All he can do is swim. His lungs are burning if he doesn't even dare open to see how close he is, because if he does, his optic blast could accidentally kill Madeline or destroy the plane, their only chance of survival. And finally, he makes it to air. Oh, it feels so good. Madeline is there to help him. They swim back to the plane. Once he gets on board, he pulls on his battle visor in case there's more trouble and giving him complete control over his optic blasts. They try the engine again. Gunnup, 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 blam! It won't work again. She's saying that the engines must be completely waterlogged. They've got to try one more time. And they have a kiss for luck. And the engines start. They are airborne. They fly away above the clouds. And they give each other a honeymoon kiss. And they start to talk about what they had only begun to talk about before. What are they going to do with their lives? Remember that Cyclops has been offered to leave with his father, with the Starjammers, to go out into the stars to have space adventures. And he could go back to the X-Men. He could go with Madeline and stop being an X-Men. And he says, it's time for me to be selfish. It's time for me to have what I've never had, a family, a home. And I want to have that with you. And as they hug each other and fly away into the moonrise, it says, the beginning. And that ends Classic X-Men number 80. So you know that Cyclops is going to go off with Madeline and they'll start a happy family and nothing ever will happen to Cyclops ever again. I couldn't even say that while keeping a straight face and laughing, but at least right now the two of them are happy. You have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.